हेलो दोस्तों, कैसे हो आप सभी लोग। सो टुडे इन दिस वीडियो वी आर गोना डिस्कस अबाउट द राइज ऑफ इंडिया's strategic diplomacy. For more than 2 decades, India used to sit outside the room where the world's richest nation made the biggest decision. It was not a member, so it didn't have a voting right. Yet today, every major power wants India at the table. So what changed actually? How did India go from being a guest at the G7 to becoming a strategic partner that the best can no longer ignore? And could this transformation redefine the global order itself? Like imagine a club so powerful that its members control technology, finance, military power, innovation and global institutions. And that club is the G7. Its members are United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Canada or Japan. Decades, these countries dominates the global economy. India was outside, not because it lacked importance, no, but because the world order was built long before India rise. And then something unexpected happened. The global balance of power starts shifting slowly, then rapidly, and India became the impossible to ignore. The world didn't changed overnight, but when it did, India was ready. Actually, by the early 200s, cracks began to appear in the old system. The G7 still had immense power, but emerging economies were growing faster. China was surging or rising. Even India's growth was accelerating, and the global south demands a greater voice. And suddenly, the question emerged, can the future be decided without India? The answer is no. India was no longer merely a large country. It has become a major economy, a nuclear power, a technological hub, a space power, a digital governance leader, and the voice of developing nations, the global south. And that is why in 2003, India started receiving invitations to G7 summit. At first, it seems symbolic, but there is nothing symbolic in geopolitics. It often reveals the deeper realities. India was entering the room not because of courtesy, but because of necessity. And the necessity was the China factor. Because the biggest geopolitical shock of the 21st century is the rise of China. As China's economy and military influence expanded, concerns grew across Europe, North America and Asia. Supply chains become vulnerable. Trade dependence become strategic risk. Technology become a battleground. And the world began searching for alternate. And then one country stood out, that is the India. A democracy, a massive market, a young workforce, a trusted technology partner. Suddenly, India was not merely another developing country. It became a strategic balancing power. The best needed India needed partnership. A new equation was born. The question was no longer whether India mattered or not. The question becomes how central India would be to the future world order. And then comes the second major development, that is the India's global south leadership. But as India's rise was not based only on economics, it based on representation across Asia, Africa, Latin America and the Pacific. Many countries felt excluded from global decision making. They wanted a voice. India stepped forward, not as a superpower imposing its will, but as a bridge between the developed and developing world. During the G20's presidency, India amplified concerns of developing nations, food security, climate justice, debt crisis, technological access, development finance, and this transformed India's diplomatic identity. India was no longer simply speaking for itself, it was increasingly speaking for the global south. Influence is not just about power, it is about who trusts you when the world became uncertain. So India envisioned the Indo-Mediterranean dream, that is, the future. For centuries, global trade connected Europe and Asia. But today, India wanted to redesign these connections, and there comes the vision of India Middle East Economic Corridor, the IMEC, a grand vision connecting India, Middle East and Europe. Though railways, energy corridor, digital connectivity, maritime routes, trade networks, this is not just an infrastructure project, it is a geopolitical statement. India is positioning itself as a connector between the continents, the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, the Asia and the Europe, the global south and the developed world. India is positioning itself as a bridge between these. The route may be economics, but the ambitions are geopolitical. But every great strategy faces some obstacles, and India's path is no exception to it. Conflict in the Middle East threatens the connectivity plan. For example, the Iran-Israel conflict is intensifying. The world is entering a new era of strategic competition. So India faces a difficult balancing act. Strengthening partnership with G7 without sacrificing the strategic autonomy, cooperate with the West without becoming dependent on it, expanding its influence without getting trapped in great power conflict. And this may be India's biggest diplomatic challenge yet. In a divided world, India's greater strength may be the ability to work with everyone while belonging to no bloc. The story of India's relationship with the G7 is not merely about summit invitation. It is a story of transformation, a story of nation that moved from margin to the center, from observer to the participant, from participant to the partner, and perhaps from partner to shaper of the emerging global order. The world is changing. Old institutions are adapting, new power are rising, and in this historic transition, India's role is becoming impossible to ignore. So, the real question is no longer whether India has a seat at the table or not. The real question is whether the future global order can be designed without India. Do you think India should eventually become a permanent member of the G7, or is its influence greater as an independent strategic power? Let me know in the comment section, and thank you all for watching the video. Bye.